Caught in Time is set in southern China in the 1990s when a band of well-trained and ruthless robbers called the Eagle Gang are running rampant. The gang, led by a man codenamed Falcon, never hesitates to commit heinous crimes every time they rob, including killing innocent people. And that's exactly what they did right after the movie started. They killed the jewelry shop owner they robbed just because he tried to contact the police. But without them knowing, their actions were seen by a detective who happened to come to the shop. The detective, whose name is Zhang, managed to catch one of the robbers as they were about to escape before running to a payphone to call for help. But just as he dialed the number, the other robbers noticed his presence. They then reflexively beat up Zhang and threw him in their car, taking him with them on their escape. Their action, however, was spotted by people around the scene, who immediately contacted the police. So, it was only natural that sometime after they left the jewelry store, the police were already after them. Even so, Falcon remained calm because he had found a way to stop the police car from chasing them. He put on Zhang a mask similar to the one they were wearing and then threw him out of the car. But here, we can see Zhang's cleverness. Before he was thrown out, he bit the Falcon's ear to make it easier for him to identify him later. Zhang is a detective who has just been transferred to this city. So when the cops stopped their car and removed the mask covering his head, they assumed he was one of the robbers and threw him in jail. Luckily, Zhang's subordinate, Guang Hua, heard about his arrest by the police. So he immediately came to see Zhang in his cell to clear up any misunderstandings and get him out of jail. As soon as he was free, Zhang got to work and informed his subordinates that he had been hunting the Eagle Gang for the past 7 days, and he promised them he wouldn't let the gang get away after what they did. The Eagle Gang seems to have often carried out robberies and killed hundreds of people, but the police never managed to catch them. Not to mention, the police are still having trouble tracking down their identities. According to Zhang, the members of the Eagle Gang are really good at outwitting the police. They deliberately use imported weapons and police vehicles every time they act, making it difficult for the police to identify them. It was true what Zhang said. So far, Falcon always buys imported weapons from a shop owner. And in that shop, he often watches crime movies to learn various tricks to escape the police. Then, a week before committing the robbery, Falcon and his gang members would prepare all their plans carefully, including surveying the location for their robbery and finding a safe escape route. They will even call the police and make a false report just to learn how fast the police move after receiving a crime report and to find out how much time they have to carry out a robbery. Because of the detail of their plans, they usually divide themselves into 3 teams, which will be placed at 3 different points. The first team is in charge of watching from high ground, the second team is getting ready in the car, while the rest are carrying out the robbery. In November 1990, the Eagle Gang carried out a robbery at a bank. But before executing their plan, they stopped at a nearby restaurant and spent about 10 minutes eating while watching the bank. Only then did they move into the bank and begin to act. The gang managed to steal the money in the bank within the estimated duration, allowing them to escape long before the police arrived at the scene. When the police finally arrived at the scene, they found only 4 safe doors that had been pulled apart, while the contents of the safes themselves have been taken until nothing remains. The police were confused about how the Eagle Gang pulled the safe doors off with just a rope. Here, only Zhang could understand the tricks the gang was using. He then demonstrated their way by tying shoelaces using a special knot on 2 pencils before pulling the shoelaces with all his might and breaking the pencil. The same principle applies to the doors of the safe. After finding nothing else they could find at the crime scene, the police went to a restaurant the gang had visited. But apparently, Falcon had guessed the police would definitely try to investigate the restaurant. So before going to the bank, he deposited some money with the restaurant's cashier and told her that some cops would be coming soon. If the cops did come, she had to give them the money and tell them that Falcon wanted to treat them. They are free to order whatever food they want with that money. The cops were offended that a robber like Falcon wanted to treat them, but Zhang took the money instead and used it to order food. At least, this act of robbery allowed him to understand a little more the mode of operation used by the Eagle Gang, that they had a habit of robbing a place where there were tall buildings nearby. The next day, Zhang visited Chen's shop, where Falcon often bought illegal weapons. There, he threatened Chen to cooperate with the police in arresting the Eagle Gang. If Chen refused, he would certainly be thrown in prison. On the other hand, Zhang promised to look away from his illegal activities if he cooperated. After successfully getting Chen's cooperation, Zhang then spent time in the shop watching the crime movies that Falcon often watched, hoping that this way he could better understand the tactics of the Eagle Gang. But until a year has passed, the police still have not been able to catch the gang. And interestingly, the gang did not act during that period. Apart from that, Zhang and the other police officers maintain vigilance and always keep an eye on certain points that are vulnerable to armed robbery. It was only in September 1991 that the Eagle Gang returned to robbing a bank. However, this time their plan didn't go as smoothly as usual. Although they managed to get the money out of the bank, one gang member in charge of supervising from a high point was shot by Zhang. Zhang's efforts to study the gang's robbery tactics for over a year finally paid off. Even the gang always managed to escape after robbing, but he didn't think they would let their members be caught by the police. They would prefer to kill off members who could potentially divulge their identities before the police could question them. Zhang's assumption was true. Falcon decides to return to the scene to kill any captured living witnesses, even if he has to fire on civilians and police in the process. During firefight, Zhang destroyed the gang's vehicle, but unfortunately, the gang still managed to escape by hijacking a taxi. Upon returning to the base, the members of the Eagle Gang are eager to avenge the death of their comrade who was shot by Zhang. Falcon agreed with them but didn't want them to take revenge directly. His best revenge was to ensure the police could never catch them. So for that, Falcon decided that they should carry out their next robbery in another city. Apart from that, they also had to change their strategy. Before leaving for the next town, the Eagles gang hijacked a police car and tied 4 policemen carrying their paychecks inside. Surprisingly, they didn't take any of the money. They just slipped a message in the envelope containing the money, telling the police that the Eagle gang was responsible for this. Over the years that followed, from 1991 to 1993, the Eagle gang really went crazy. They managed to rob many jewelry shops and banks in various cities in southern China. Then, in February 1994, Zhang and his men arrived in Qingzhou to investigate a robbery whose mode of operation was identical to that of the Eagle gang. Only this time, the target of the robbery was a truck carrying the miners' paychecks. There was a riot when Zhang arrived, where the miners whose money was robbed wanted to take the money of the miners who were not robbed. But finally, the riot ended after Zhang promised the miners that the police would take back their hard-earned money from the robbers. Meanwhile, Falcon was walking around town when a girl bumped into him. Sensing she was in trouble, he followed her to the roof of a building, where he saw her about to jump. But the girl, Wen Juan, gave up her intention because she lacked the guts to do so. Instead, she got acquainted with Falcon and had a long chat with him while gazing at the cityscape. Some time had passed since that day when Zhang asked the city council to install CCTV near shops and banks, resulting in severely restricted Eagle Gang's movement. Now that they have a hard time robbing with increasingly tight security, some gang members are getting so frustrated that they think they should just keep robbing. After all, they needed money, and their only skill was robbing. However, Falcon forbids them to do that. He didn't want them to be caught just for being rash and impatient. Zhang and his team stayed behind in Qingzhou, waiting for the moment the Eagle Gang continued their action. Zhang even seemed obsessed with capturing the Eagle Gang. He is willing to stay up all night, watching every CCTV in the city. But after passing days of sleep deprivation, Zhang had finally reached his limit. He hallucinated and saw everyone around him wearing the same mask as the Eagle Gang. A few days later, Zhang could no longer continue to work like that. He collapsed and had to be hospitalized. While Zhang struggles to track down the Eagle Gang, the gang leader marries Wen Juan, and it didn't take long for her to become pregnant with their first child. Wen Juan herself actually knew that Falcon was a robber, but she didn't mind. She was already in love with him, too much to fuss over things like that. A few days later, Falcon sent a code to its members so that they could gather at a badminton court. But when the appointed day arrived, one of the members didn't show up, which made Falcon very angry. His members chose to leave the gang to turn into smugglers. And to make the situation worse, many other members were interested in following the traitor. They haven't been robbed in too long, and they need money. Although initially angry at their desire to quit the Eagle Gang, Falcon asks them not to worry about money anymore. He promised to devise a new robbery plan for them. The Eagle Gang's plan to return to action was finally spotted by a police officer, who then reported it to his superiors and Zhang. It's just that this time the Eagles Gang will not carry out their actions in Qingzhou but in Wujiang. Based on the information obtained, bank officers will take cash from several branches in Wujiang, and the Eagle Gang will be waiting at the last branch in the middle of the market. Zhang predicted that he and his team would engage in a firefight against the Eagle Gang in the last branch. Hence, he asked his team to really prepare before going there. Shortly before the robbery, Falcon hands a grenade to a boy, claiming it was just a toy for him. But the truth is, he planned for the boy to detonate the grenade at the right time to distract people from them. Not long after, the pickup officers finally came to the last bank branch, but Falcon and his accomplices didn't attack them right away. They deliberately waited for the officers to take the money from the bank. When they returned from the bank and were about to enter the car, Falcon and his team killed them. After that, the Eagle Gang moved all the cash suitcases from the officers' cars to theirs. But they did not realize that the escape route they had prepared had been surrounded by the police. Ultimately, they were forced to make a new way out by shooting at the police who got in their way. And the police do not remain silent. They returned fire from the gang and managed to kill a gang member. After a while, the gang finally managed to pave the way for them to escape. But just before their car drove off, a dying policeman opened the back door of their car. As a result, all the cash suitcases fall onto the road as the car speeds away, causing Falcon to be furious that his robbery ended in complete failure. And one of the reasons for that failure was that the boy had never detonated the grenade he had received from the Falcon. The grenade was eventually secured by Zhang. But despite the success of the police in thwarting the robbery, this afternoon's battle still takes many lives, both from the civilians and the police. That's why Zhang encouraged his team to get the Eagle Gang as fast as possible. They couldn't just let the gang's brutality continue. Then, a few hours later, the police received information that the Eagle Gang was staying at a hotel. Without wasting much time, they rushed to the hotel where they found 2 gang members who had been injured in the incident this afternoon. But 2 men continued to resist when they were about to be arrested, forcing the police to shoot them dead. To make matters worse, one of the gang members tried to kill the policeman with a grenade shortly before his death, forcing Zhang to snatch the grenade out of his hands. But unfortunately, Zhang did not have time to throw the grenade away. The grenade exploded in his grip, leaving his right hand torn apart by the explosion. Actually, the 2 weren't the only ones in the hotel when the police came to raid. Falcon and a colleague were also there, but they managed to escape, disguised in police uniforms. After the incident, the police managed to tap Falcon's pager. They found the address of Wen Zhuan's apartment in Qingzhou, prompting Zhang and his team to return to Qingzhou to keep an eye on the apartment, hoping that Falcon would return to check on his pregnant wife. A few days later, Falcon did come there, but instead of going straight to Wen Zhuan, he forcibly seized the apartment across from theirs. He was sure the police were watching him, and because of that, he chose to suppress his longing for his wife. For now, he had to be satisfied looking at her from a distance. After thinking for a moment, Falcon sent a secret message through a pager to Wen Zhuan before calling her on the phone, asking her to pretend she didn't know him so she wouldn't go to jail in case he was caught. He asks her to forget him. He said it would be much better for her to pack her things and go find another man. Wen Zhuan immediately obeyed Falcon's orders. She burns all of her photos with him before changing her appearance. The police, who had tapped the phone in the apartment, quickly intercepted Wen Zhuan before she could leave the apartment. Even so, she chose to remain silent when the police interrogated her about the meaning of the secret message Falcon had sent her through the pager a few hours earlier. Likewise, when the police found her marriage certificate with Falcon. Because Wen Zhuan kept refusing to talk, the police were forced to discover the meaning of the secret message by themselves. They finally found out that it was a code from a book that contained the location where Falcon and Wen Zhuan would meet, which was a movie theater. The police headed to the movie theater in question through the information obtained, where they later found a man with a torn ear, just like Falcon. They then caught him just as he was about to shoot himself. But it turned out that the man was not the person they were looking for. He is Falcon's comrade, his loyal follower, willing to slice his ear off to outwit the police. The police, however, had no idea that this man was not a Falcon. Zhang wasn't sure that the man they caught was Falcon, but he couldn't prove his doubts. As a result, they continued to believe all the statements of the fake Falcon and even announced to the public their success in catching the criminal who had been terrorizing them all this time. Meanwhile, the real Falcon is now in his hometown. At his mother's house, he watched television about his comrade's arrest and how the police had closed the case. It was revealed that Falcon had planned everything a long time ago. From the pager code to the plan to pretend to meet at the movie theater, he had it all planned to trick the police. He even prepared a fake photo on his marriage certificate with Wen Zhuan. Even so, Zhang still doubted whether he had really caught Falcon. And so he went to Wen Zhuan's apartment again, where he found the hearing aid that Falcon intended to give his mother. In September 1994, Zhang reported to Zhang about the death of Chen, the illegal arms dealer who ended his life. He felt guilty that his family had been victims of the robbery by the Eagle Gang, for which he supplied their weapons. But before his death, he sent the police a pager, the one Falcon used to call whenever he needed a gun. It was from the pager that Zhang finally discovered that Falcon was now in his hometown. So without wasting any more time, he and his subordinate, Qian, headed toward the location of their hunt. At the same time, Falcon is preparing his new plan to rob a jewelry store, and for that, he needs a gun. So he called Chen and asked him to meet him at a place that always rained. He didn't know that his secret message was read by Zhang and Qian, who believed that the place always rained was referred to as a public bathhouse. So with that, they started to check the public bathhouses in the city one by one until they managed to find the public bathhouse run by Falcon's mother. Zhang became even more confident that Falcon was indeed there after seeing his hearing aid. Zhang Cheng then told Qian to call the local police station for help while he met Falcon in the bathhouse with a gun and handcuffs in his hands. At last, Zhang Cheng could see Falcon's true face, but he decided not to catch him right away. He chose to invite him to speak to buy time until help from the local police arrived. But Falcon is no fool. He knew there was no way Zhang Cheng had come alone. Sooner or later, the police will definitely raid the place. Therefore, for him to escape, he had to defeat Zhang Cheng. He didn't care if he had to fight him shirtless. After a fierce battle, Zhang Cheng defeated Falcon and captured him. What's even better, the towel never comes off during the fight. At the film's end, Falcon is executed after being imprisoned for 224 days, and his wife was sentenced to 9 years in prison for being guilty of protecting him. Just an interesting fact, the film is based on the robbery and murder case committed by Zhang Jun, who in the 90s was dubbed China's #1 outlaw. Before his execution on May 20, 2001, he had killed 28 people. The moral that can be learned from this movie is, it's not easy being a cop. Sometimes they had to deal with people like Falcon who could take human lives without hesitation.